work for 1 year in the Colombian Amazon.
So what does genetic field work look like? Because we've had linguistic field work and anthropological field work kind of featured on the podcast previously, and biogeographical, of course. And I think, for each type of field work, it can look very different, right? So how does it look for a geneticist?
Well, so for a geneticist, first we need to define who do we want to study. So what are the populations we want to study? And so normally a first hint that you have to define the populations are the ethnolinguistic groups. So normally when you see, okay, what is the diversity, like the linguistic diversity of an area, and then you see a map where there's, okay, here there are these people that belong to this ethnicity that normally speak this language.
Different.
So on a field trip, you first start for defining what are the populations you want to study. And I started with a map of the linguistic diversity of Colombia, which was a very multicolor map. So it was just like so much diversity there, many different languages. And then I say, wow, I want to study all this diversity, so I have to go there. And so I basically went to many different places, many small towns, and tried to make contacts. I have some previous contacts from my master's and my bachelor's experience in the field. But yeah, so the Colombian Amazon is an area that is around 400,000 square kilometers. So it's bigger than Germany.
Yeah.
And so you don't have like autobahns everywhere that connects one place to another. So it's a very isolated area where rivers and small plains that you have to contract normally allow you to move from one place to the other. And that's what I did. I went to towns, and normally I went to some administrative offices in each town, and I asked, okay, is there any office dealing here with indigenous affairs? And I'm interested in understanding and in studying the human diversity in this area and the linguistic diversity, and so how all these groups are related, how the communities of people speaking different languages are related. What is the origin of this diversity, and when these people kind of migrated there and kind of established as different groups, and yeah, so of course, yeah, there's a challenge to kind of explain these and so tell people, okay, I'm interested in the story, like in studying the history of those groups. But many groups will say, okay, but we know our history. What are you going to tell about our history? So
certainly. So that's a really interesting point, actually, if I may just focus on it for a bit, is because of course the type of history, we kind of use the same word a lot, like the genetic history of a people, but there's sort of different things going on here at the same time, right? There's the history, the narrative that the communities themselves construct, as we all do, our narratives of our group's past and the past of other peoples, right? The whole kind of historical cosmology on one level, and then there's the types of questions that you want to ask, right, which are a bit different, of course. So how do you negotiate that? How do you say, well, yes, your history, which is very valid, is as you say, is this. I also want to investigate this other thing. How do you bridge that with the communities?
Well, yeah, it's a challenging task, and it's a process of building trust, and so showing people that you have like a real and a trustful, or how do you say, a sincere goal to to study, and you are interested in their history and who they are and how they came to be what they are nowadays. So I think when you study history and you are interested in these kind of studies, you have an advantage in comparison, for example, with other, let's say the like physics, for example, because the interest in history and the interest in who we are is a universal feature of human societies, and we see across the world that many human societies are interested in their history, and then they record this history in different ways, and as you say, they have cosmogonies. So so we as scientists, we are also interested in understanding that, and we know that this history is very complex and has been shaped by many different factors, and they are aware of that. So because they have experienced many different events and situations in the past that have impacted who they are and where they live. So you have to go there and say, okay, so we know that the history is complex and is incomplete because we cannot go back to the past and kind of see what happened and where people live and why people move. So we just know from parts of this history that is encoded in, for example, for Western societies in books, and also for other societies around the world that coded, have some sort of writing that code their history. But in these societies, in the Native American societies, this was mainly based in oral traditions.
Right.
So they have all their histories encoded in stories about their origin, how they are related to who they marry, and so there is in these stories normally you see a combination of like animal characters and pre-humans and humans, but also like mountains and other features that are like all these features encode their history. And it's like when you think on Greek mythology, you think that Greek mythology is all about fantasies and like stories that people just invented out of but in those mythologies or cosmogonies, the history of these people is encoded. They use these different constructions to encode their history, and so biology is another tool as studying cosmogonies or ancient books or languages. It's another tool to study their history, because we can study the DNA, and I already mentioned that this DNA is transmitted from generation to generation, from our parents, grandparents, etc. So by studying the DNA, we can gain some insights about this history.
So the record of sort of who was where and when, and sort of who had children with whom, etc. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And so I normally what I will do is go first contact the leaders of each community, have a chat with them, explain the aims of our research and how this research can help us to understand more of this history. And afterwards, I will go to our community and have a meeting with many people where I will explain. Many of these communities are bilingual in Spanish, so I'm an native Spanish speaker. But in some cases, we use local translators, some assistants that we contract in the field to help us kind of translate. But you already see the difficulties first of communicating these complex ideas and then using someone to translate those complex ideas into their language and their.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think it's already hard enough to communicate about genetics in English or Spanish, where we have these long traditions of working with those vocabularies, and yet it's still difficult. So I can imagine it's quite hard to indeed sort of really bridge deep cultural divides, and yet still communicate about genetics.
Yeah, and then so once you explain that, so you first have to explain kind of what the DNA is, where the DNA is stored. So we normally say, okay, so we know that, so we have we are the product of a union between our parents. So our parents give birth to us, and we inherited many things from our parents. And when you compare yourself with your parents or your grandparents, you see that there are some things in common. And when we compare ourselves with our siblings, we see that we are not exactly the same, but we share some features with them and with our parents and grandparents. So what I say is that, our body is made of these small blocks, and each of these blocks contain information on how these traits are transmitted. And so and we can use that information that is stored in each of these blocks and to study their history. And I was, for example, we normally collect saliva. And so people were like, oh, but for some people were funny, like, why are you interested in my saliva? And so, the skin inside our mouth is one of the tissues that one of the tissues that rechange faster in our body. So in their saliva, you have parts of those cells or these blocks, and from those blocks is where we extract the DNA in the laboratory and then study this DNA. And that's where normally, just going back to the initial point, is how the field work for population genetics is. I don't know if that's clear enough, or if I just